Welcome to the Over Underrated for Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, the Hideo Kojima edition. For those new to this, we look at an aggregate score of critic and user reviews and see if with hindsight the game was over or underrated. This isn't a review necessarily where I break down the controls or a play-by-play gameplay, it's more a look back at the game once the dust has settled. Hideo Kojima is of course the much loved maverick of the games industry. Screwed over by Konami for Metal Gear Solid 5, he took on an even bigger mantelpiece in the minds of gamers all over the world. He's a visionary of that there is no doubt, and his latest vision, Death Stranding, was the trippiest vision of them all. It was equal part beautiful, equal part bizarre. It reminds me of those cartoons the Beatles used to make in the 60s, when they were at a retreat in the mountains on the Himalayas or something. It looked freaking cool, but what the hell was it about? And boy, didn't Hideo want you to know this was his little pet project. So, welcome to a Hideo Kojima over underrated of a Hideo Kojima experience. It's Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding. Hideo Kojima. I played Death Stranding on the PC and it has to be said, the engine runs incredibly well. It really is the definitive edition of the game. It's superbly detailed, the lighting is fantastic, the outdoor environments are rendered beautifully. It's like walking through a World Heritage site every 5 seconds. Even when you enter the BT side of things, the style is stark compared to the beautiful normal world. There are plenty of incredible landscapes. It'd be a sin to do this review without commenting on the graphics and production. Simply put, Death Stranding both runs and looks spectacular on the PC, which is the truly definitive and perfect way to play the game. The stunning production value and visual quality of the cutscenes are a godsend and easily got me through the back half of the game. Since the final few hours of the game really feel like a complete compilation of very confusing cutscenes. Had the story delivered, this wouldn't have bummed me out as much, but the acting and voice acting really carried the cutscenes stroke movie scenes. Death Stranding's overall strengths, which are its world design and stunning scenery, are gloriously enhanced on the PC, and it was quickly something that became a quite unique experience within the first couple of hours. There are so many times I just stopped and gawked at the scenery, the moments when the music kicks in as you walk through a valley and look over a vast landscape. It's a really, really unique feeling and one that really I haven't experienced in any video game before. Talking about the story in Death Stranding is almost as confusing as the story itself. Well, almost. To truly enjoy the story, you really need to be willing to forgive Death Stranding from the start and be willing to kind of just go along for the ride, or the walk. You get what I mean. Symbolically, the story is wonderful. There's a lot of symbology and a lot of what's happening on screen, and if you just ignore all the weird shit, it's very, very cool. However, the story is heavily backloaded, and by the end, the story just kind of unfolds into a needlessly complex, weird script that doesn't really enhance the themes or the plot. Especially the themes, which actually are very good underneath the surface. In fact, the story is just downright confusing a lot of the time, and I had to do a lot of reading around it to piece it together, because I wasn't 100% sure if I had it right. Spoiler, I didn't have it right. One thing I have to talk about in the story is how incredible Mads Mikkelsen is and how criminally underused he is. He owns every scene he is in, and if he had been the main bad guy, or maybe even the scriptwriter, this game would have been much, much improved on this front. One or two plot twists are fine, but Death Stranding is just kind of littered with curveballs and bizarre drivel that just carries on for way, way too long. It's a shame because I completely engaged with the kind of original pitch, especially from the initial release trailers, but frankly, the final hours of the game are just a mess. Immediately after the game throws an epiphany at you, it just throws you another weird curveball or another weird moment, and it just gets a bit too much to handle a lot of the time. I don't have a problem with the story having a couple of twists and turns, but there are way too many of them all kind of packed together quite soon after another. It's almost as if Kojima was just let loose on the script and nobody was there to really tell him where he was going wrong. I feel like sometimes he's feeling himself a little bit too much on some of these ideas he has.
I'm gonna make Mac look so bad. My form is perfect. I'm like Jerry Rice. Feel that stride. So fluid and fast. I've got the stride of a gazelle. A beautiful, beautiful gazelle.
And if he was just reined in a bit, he'd have a much more focused product. I may be critical of the story, but I cannot criticise the performances. They all delivered their lines absolutely brilliantly. They clearly enjoyed what they were doing. My guess is they probably didn't have a clue what was going on at the back end of the game, but they delivered their lines brilliantly. After the foundation of the game is outlined, you're just left to make deliveries by yourself for a significant amount of time. Depending on the number of quests you take on, you can spend a large amount of hours, I'm talking maybe 20, 30, 40 hours, of doing what should just feel like busy work, but actually it doesn't. The exploration is a real joy, and I didn't think I would ever have thought that about this game. When I first heard about Death Stranding once it was released, and I heard about how you just walk around delivering things, I completely avoided the game. It was only lockdown and the utter boredom of having nothing to do that made me get this game. And honestly, the exploration is a wonder at times. It's just you, BB, and just a vast landscape, and just beautiful indie folk music that just kicks in and just elevates your mood. You just feel like you're in this absolutely stunning Bon Iver video half the time. Just walking is a minigame in itself, and one that I really enjoyed. I shouldn't have, but I did. Once you get your first upgrade, maintaining balance isn't really an issue and is actually just a quirky little game that's just there all the time. If you can power through the early hours, Death Stranding becomes an even more enjoyable experience. Exoskeletons make it easier to carry multiple cargo deliveries at once. Grenades and guns make it a lot easier to take out BTs and makes traversing the whole world a bit more straightforward. I was particularly fond of the shared online highways. The reason was I really got into the world building, something I'll touch on in a minute. What would have been a very difficult walk becomes a lot easier drive eventually. Overall, that develops really, really nicely. And that's the bit I loved. I loved the feeling of building a world with others, that feeling of connectivity, the feeling that we're better off together than we are alone. And that is where Hideo Kojima has absolutely nailed this game on the head. The underlying themes, again, we'll touch upon that in a second, are that together we can build something, and that is exactly what you end up doing in Death Stranding. I personally ended up going to all corners of the world to find as much metal as possible, to build roads in the world and to build as many highways as I could, not only to make my game easier, but because I wanted to make other people's games easier. And that is utterly and absolutely genius by Hideo Kojima. Despite my qualms about the closing hours of Death Stranding, I truly enjoyed the large majority of it. There are plenty of moments where, the tone-setting music kicks in and the landscape just completely takes your breath away. The weird thing about the game flow is the bits I thought I'd hate, the walking around, the delivering, are the bits I ended up loving the most, and the bits I thought I ended up loving the most, such as the really unique looking story and characters, were the bits I really were left a bit disappointed with. I ended up building the majority of the roads in the game world, trekking miles to do things that I'd never do in any other game. Kind of becoming a kind of self-ordained transport minister in a weird way. And that is the underlying brilliance of the game. The game is overall about being able to connect and reconnect with people. And we need to realise that as a society, we are better off together than we are alone. And that's what your character's doing, is connecting disconnected parts of society together by delivering them packages. In a world where we now live with COVID, where we don't get to see people, it's almost like Kojima was foretelling what was happening in the future in a very weird and, funnily enough, a very Death Stranding kind of way. Helping others is the cornerstone of life, which is why you should maybe subscribe to this channel. Death Stranding feels like two games in one, designed for seemingly opposite parts of the gaming spectrum. One is a wholly unique open world adventure with this weird kind of shared world multiplayer experience that allows me to feel like I'm part of a community, building this desolate world from scratch. And the other part of the game is this really weird, long, confusing, deeply strange M. Night Shyamalan type movie. The first part is really pulling a large majority of the weight for the large chunk of the game. The second part kind of takes over the end of the game. A truly unique experience, but also a really befuddling one. The game is oddly relaxing and rewarding. Kojima's quirky traits are all over this game, but you can't rely on quirkiness all the time. Sometimes you have to nail the delivery, and Kojima does miss the point here on the story a lot of the time. It ends up becoming a weird, confusing meditation on death and disconnection in the story.
Sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
It's not like you've lost a pen, is it? It's so much worse. Do you like a pen? I have a spare one.
No, thank you.
Please take it.
Why are you giving it to me?
I don't know.
That doesn't really make sense without some serious reading around and having to revisit the story in your brain. No other medium connects you to others like video gaming does. There's nothing else like it. That's what makes video gaming so unique. And no other medium has the power to bring people together for the common good of strangers like video games can, specifically like this video game. And that is an incredible social experiment that he's made. But sometimes it does feel like Hideo Kojima feels himself a little bit too much, and he doesn't have people around him reining him in on certain aspects to make a truly focused game.
I reign supreme over everyone in this school. I am the golden god of this place. I reign supreme. I
felt the same with Metal Gear Solid 5, if I'm being totally honest with you, and I definitely felt the same here. It had moments of absolute genius and incredible moments, and the game gets under your skin and sticks with you months after you finish it, which is testament to kind of the type of director and game producer Hideo Kojima is. I did feel a lot of the positivity about this game was almost due to the fact it was a Hideo Kojima game, and people will lap up anything Hideo Kojima does at quite some speed.
Will you calm down? You're eating that cheese stick like some kind of giant bird, you know?
I can't help it, Carly. I got an insatiable hunger.
I know what the hunger is, dude. Don't start telling me about the hunger, okay? I'm feeling it good.
I don't think Hideo Kojima's peaked. However, I do feel his last two games have been overrated. And one of my favourite games ever is Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1. I do hope his next project is a lot more focused, but he's still allowed to have that creative, quirky freedom that he has. If he does that, I think he could truly make something absolutely incredible. Overall though, against the Metacritic score and the user score of an average of 82%, I do feel I have to say Death Stranding is a little bit overrated. And that's not me saying you shouldn't play this game. In fact, despite the fact I say it's overrated, it's almost a game as a gamer you have to play. It's just that type of game. You need to forgive the script and the flaws and just enjoy the wonderfully beautiful scenic ride that is Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding. It encapsulates some of the most memorable moments of 2020 in gaming, but also some of the most confusing, and that quite frankly is Death Stranding in a nutshell. Overall, I'm feeling a mid to strong 7 for Death Stranding. I hope you enjoyed this over under. Hideo Kojima fanboys, come at me. Take care. Peace out.